Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and Iman here from the Block Runner, MetaZone, Rovi, and MScribe, and today we're bringing you the Bitcoin Renaissance. Welcome back, Iman.
Definitely feel like that's not the first time you've heard that being said, right? Or
No.
is it?
I don't know. I think it is the first time.
Maybe it is the first time. I think we've heard Renaissance from like context of different things. Maybe it was like the metaverse Renaissance last cycle or something. I don't fucking know. But yeah, I mean, Renaissance probably is the comfy word to like label what's happening here.
Yeah.
You know me, I'm like a real doomer here, so I like to call it a war. The Bitcoin war. That's what it feels like, right? There's, everybody all of a sudden agrees again with our thesis we've been like pushing for over a year now. So programmability extensions to Bitcoin are a big deal. Like you're not going to actually discover real true value without it, right? So
yeah, I mean, we discovered Track, and Track was doing indexing on Bitcoin, and then all of a sudden it was you use Track for programmability to a certain extent, and now he's got layer 1 programmability. All of a sudden I lost my hearing.
Did you?
It's back. I'm back. So we've been talking about this. We knew that programmability was the thing when everybody was talking about like other stupid stuff like memes. Like,
yeah.
I mean, but anyway, let's talk about what's actually happening. So, Iman, I think you can see this tweet. It's by Vincent. It says, just in Forbes new article, the Bitcoin Renaissance unlocking trillions in value. So all the links will be in the description, but essentially, why is everyone building on Bitcoin, right? I think it started with ordinals, and all of a sudden people thought that they could inject this arbitrary values into Bitcoin UTXOs, which is cool, right? Very cool. But then it was like, okay, what else can you do? It's like, well, not much, right? And so now everyone's like trying to figure out how to inject some programmability of these UTXOs. And so Benny's been talking about this for months, and finally he had this eureka moment on being able to program UTXOs, right, on layer 1, not layer 2 stuff. So we're going to get into some layer 2 stuff. So I guess any thoughts here, Iman?
No, it's just, the race is on, I guess, to figure out what is the most optimal from many different like approaches, right? Like from a technical perspective, maybe even just marketing, timing of the market. I mean, it's really hard to just really pinpoint what is going to be like a determining factor, right? Or maybe there doesn't even need to be one. Maybe there's enough liquidity share within the Bitcoin ecosystem, maybe not, to where like every single one of these iterations can, support their own native, activity, I guess. Yeah. Or I mean, that is the experiment here. We're all kind of witnessing like this. Everybody has their own interpretation. How do we extend programmability? And if that ends up working, then how do we like achieve scalability moving forward? Like all these things, right? That, I mean, if you've been a part of the Bitcoin Core like ecosystem from the beginning, I'm sure these are not new conversations, right? This has been happening. But for whatever reason, the timing of the market just seems right. I think it's because there's a lot of stagnation in relation to like Ethereum, Solana, everywhere else, right? So like Bitcoin is the only like new frontier left in like crypto to kind of like implement these things.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, so let's take a this other link here by Bunzi. It says Bitcoin's programmability race is heating up, so people are starting to pick up on this narrative. Which approach do you think will lead the pack? And OPCat is leading the pack. Of course, let's ignore TAP as part of this this conversation. Fitzy's bringing it in the conversation at least.
Yeah, so I mean, this was one of those things like, I think because now all of a sudden the public zeitgeist native to Bitcoin, now they're becoming aware of the need for programmability, and they have firsthand experience of like with things like runes and stuff like, a non-programmable developer environment is not really very fruitful, right? So now they're starting to question like, who's going to provide these pillars of infrastructure. And there's new entrants. Like again, it's like the timing is perfect for OPNet, for Arch Network, Fractal, right? These are the hot topics of today because like they're literally all in testnet phases, and they're about to deploy for the first time
Mm-hmm.
on mainnet very soon, right? When Tap, this was like a year ago when all this stuff began, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of people have like now, like they're not peering back into the past because they didn't realize like this is a thing that's been in development for, you know,
Hmm. Yeah.
back then.
That's one thing I'm noticing is that people are not looking at history. Like
No.
if you don't know history, you're bound to repeat the mistakes of the past, and so I guess that applies in everything. But
Mhm.
continuing on here, Fractal Bitcoin, like you mentioned earlier, Fractal Bitcoin testing phase reset is completed. We're thrilled to announce official launch of Fractal Bitcoin public testnet, and I guess interact with the testnet, you just need your Unisat wallet, and I think they've made an update recently where you can now switch to the network, so from Bitcoin to Fractal network.
Yeah. So there's a lot of key like narrative points here, right? Like the OP cat activation is actually a thing now, right? That was like a week or two ago. It was just a theoretical addition to Fractal, but I guess it's literally a flip of a switch. Apparently, like it's part of the you know
Yeah, I
the
mean,
opcode availability when you're developing on this Fractal instance of Bitcoin, right?
yeah, for now, I mean, Unisat's probably the only node that's mining Fractal Bitcoin at the moment, and so it wasn't very difficult to support OPCat. OPCat on Bitcoin, on the other hand, is much more difficult because it requires adoption from Bitcoin miners.
Correct. So that is a big like bullish injection, I guess, for this ecosystem. It's a lot of the Bitcoin Core, layer one maxis, that is their ultimate,
Yeah,
you know, blue skies, right? Like is activating OP-Cat native to Bitcoin Core. But nobody knows how long that's going to take and the difficulty to achieve consensus around that, right? So, but if you think it's an inevitability, you might as well be building on, this instance, right? In preparation of that.
yeah. I mean, if you know your history, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision has had some sort of a little bit of a renaissance of being able to manipulate UTXOs, inject arbitrary data into these UTXOs. And now all of a sudden, the capability is possible on Bitcoin. And then all those Bitcoin SV guys came from BTSV and started operating their businesses on Bitcoin, and they were way more successful, right? And so
Hmm.
you could imagine that OPCat on Fractal is going to be the same thing. People are going to create their projects on Fractal Bitcoin using OPCat, and however long it takes for OPCat to be enabled on Bitcoin, they're just going to transition their businesses from a test net to the main net, which is Bitcoin, right? Isn't that a reasonable prediction?
I think so. Absolutely. Yeah, and another major thing here is the BRC20 like activation in relation to all of this, right? And like extending the ticker, I guess, lengthening all the way up to 32 characters. Like it's interesting what the Unisat team is up to, right? So
Yeah,
I see this tweet from Francis Dune.
yeah.
If you need more reasons to be bullish, like they're here they are, dude. Like if you know the context, like we're talking about history. If for whatever reason you don't know the history of the space, Unisat had a tremendous impact on like where things are today, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's take a look at these four reasons. So Unisat developed the first wallet for tokens on Bitcoin. Unisat launched the first marketplace for Bitcoin, the first indexer for tokens on Bitcoin, and then they're affiliated with Binance, which is huge, right? The Asia market is at least 3 to 4 times bigger than the West, and so anytime that there's a project that is affiliated to Binance in that market, it's always a big thing. So Francis is absolutely right here.
Yeah, and they did, looking back at the meta protocol renaissance that happened last year on Bitcoin, Unisat did things the right way, right? Like they kind of there's a reason why Ordi and Sats got onto Binance, right? Because they were able to like seize a significant portion of those tokens, right?
Yeah.
Uh, if they didn't do that, if they didn't take those measures to make sure they had, that leverage on the ecosystem of BRC20, then there would be absolutely no way that Binance could, integrate this level of support, right? We saw every other meta protocol struggle with this because most of them, the deployers of these token protocols did not take those measures, right? And Unisat wasn't the deployer of BRC20, Domo was, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But was a collaboration there early on to where like they were able to position themselves properly for this like inevitability, right? And so I think that comes from their experience and their understanding of like how Binance operates, first of all, right? So
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah. It's
that's a notch in their belt, right?
it's no accident or a surprise that we have two BRC20s, ORDI and SATs, be billion-dollar tokens and also be on Binance, right? That's not an
Mm-hmm.
accident, right? That is by design. So yeah, you need that sort of collaboration in order to have a token have that same potential.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're looking at this pizza swap on Fractal Bitcoin. I guess you want to give some context here as
I mean,
to
the context was the airdrop that happened a couple of months ago. Remember, Unisat distributed these pizza tokens kind of out of nowhere. Nobody really understood what for. I guess it was a demonstration of the 5 byte ticker, right? What better iteration of 5 characters than pizza, right? Can you think of a better one, dude?
no, definitely not.
What about titty?
I guess that's pretty good.
That
Why
yeah,
not
I
both? I
remember
mean,
Vitoshi tried to pull that one off back in the day, but it didn't really hit. But
Yeah,
so they went with pizza. But that was a very expensive like distribution, man. It was like we're talking millions of dollars, I think, to get these tokens to the hands of their users. So nobody really knew like what these tokens are for, but now I guess like details are slipping through the cracks. So it's like, they may have some functionality or some sort of purpose in relation to
yeah,
what's being built on Fractal, right?
yeah,
Specifically a swapping protocol, right? Now that's not like nothing has been officially documented in relation to this, but if you're looking for speculation and entertainment juice, like this is it, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, so there's going to be potentially an ecosystem of developers out there creating something like a pizza swap, a swapping mechanism, and pumped out fun. It's going to happen all over again, but on a new chain, and there's going to be like an explosive like entertainment environment here. Um,
Correct.
all right, so now taking a look at this. So this tweet by Businessman was in reference to Leonidas, and Leonidas is asking, in your opinion, what is the best way for a degen to get exposure to Fractal? And so
Mhm.
Businessman comes up with some points. But what's interesting here is that Leonidas doesn't really know how to like partake in this programmable ecosystem that's happening.
Well, I think so. Leonidas's comments is like a reflection on, I think a lot of people didn't see this coming. Some people did, if you're like more deeply ingrained and attentive to BRC20 like development, the writing was on the wall, the signs were there. Unisat published this like fractal
Yeah,
white paper almost a year ago,
yeah, it was a long
and
time ago.
we covered it, right? It was like,
Yeah,
dude, this is very interesting,
yeah, they
but it
mentioned
seems so like
the
theoretical as a concept. Like I don't know, to me personally, I didn't think it would actually be executed, but kudos to them. It's here, right?
yeah, yeah, they mentioned the metaverse in their fractal paper.
A lot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and so yeah, um,
So that stood out to us. Is like, hold on, dude, why is Unisat like? Are they gonna like do some bitmap stuff here? But no, it's like they have their own like roadmap objectives already planned out a year ago, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, so those are the steps. Just familiarize yourself with everything. Get involved in the test net if you want. If you want to speculate there, if there's any sort of like potential airdrop by participating on like test net applications or whatever, right? So this is typical. Like when a new protocol enters like the crypto space, you just be a part of the testnet phase. And I don't know, I struggle to say like pay attention to these like pre-fractal projects because we already saw what happened to runes, right? Most of those just like completely
yeah,
were floppers, dude. So
vaporized.
yeah, so be wary of that. There's gonna be people who are gonna try to capitalize and leverage on this hype, and they're gonna try and sell you a narrative of a pre-fractal project on the horizon, right? And get you to speculate on that.
Yeah.
So be very careful.
So going deeper into Fractal, fractalbitcoin.io is the website, and it says build and deploy on Bitcoin with Fractal within 30 minutes. And one of the more
Mm-hmm.
interesting things here that we're going to be going a little bit deeper here is they mentioned this concept called merged mining. And so this preserves the permissionless and freely available mining opportunities for the Fractal community. And the merge mining, they're leveraging Bitcoin's mining as like the parent chain, and then they have their own chain, which leverages the power input of Bitcoin into their own chain. And so I want to read this section here. So this idea of merge mining is also a known thing called auxiliary proof of work. So the idea behind this is that the work done on one blockchain can be leveraged as valid work on another chain. The blockchain that provides the proof of work is called the parent chain, which is Bitcoin, while the one that accepts it as valid is the auxiliary blockchain, which is Fractal Bitcoin. And so essentially you use Bitcoin SHA-256 hashing algorithm, and you take a block hash of Bitcoin, right? So it mines, it gets added to the chain. You take that hash, and then the auxiliary chain, which in this case is Fractal Bitcoin, takes the Bitcoin hash, adds it to the block header of Fractal's blockchain, and then hashes that with a lot less power, right? So I did a little quick research just to understand like the magnitude of this. Is how much energy does it take to mine one block of Bitcoin? So I read that it's roughly around 155,000 houses powering those homes for 1 month. You take all that energy, and that's how much energy it takes to mine one block of Bitcoin every 10 minutes. So now you take that hash value, all that energy turns into a piece of text. You take that power, that energy, the low entropy state, if you will, and then you take that hash and you add it to this new blockchain called Fractal, and then you use your laptop to mine that block, right, with that hash in it, with a lot less power, right? And so now you have this new blockchain, and now you can create, 30-second blocks, and you can create all kinds of stuff, right? Whatever it is, smart contracts, whatever you're doing on that second chain, that's what you can do. So that's what merge mining is. And digging deeper into this was like postulated by Satoshi, right? This is part of like the functionality of Bitcoin is to enable this whole thing. But I mean, really, it's pretty simple when you dive into the math of this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's very complicated, dude. But nonetheless, it's like a new core primitive we all need to kind of understand, I guess, because if this takes off and becomes, an actual Bitcoin native L2 mechanism, right? Like a lot of these L2s, remember we went over that report. There's over 60 of them now that have gotten funding from VCs. They're taking the EVM approach, so like forking over EVM capabilities and bridging assets into those environments and such. So that's not really native to Bitcoin, but Fractal seems much more aligned in that sense, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's good that they're using merge mining. It was enabled by Bitcoin. I mean, to a small extent. I mean, you could take the hash of Bitcoin right now and do stuff with it. So it's sort of like inherently enabled. I mean, it wasn't like what I'm trying to say is that it wasn't like programmatically enabled like within Bitcoin Core that you could do merge mining. It's just an idea and a concept being actually leveraged.
Correct.
All right, so
we're looking at OPNet now.
OPNet, OPNet is now live in the public, live and public on Bitcoin reg testnet. So we got the light paper and website. We have dev packages, MotoSwap, of course, running this whole thing.
So there's a lot to unpack here as far as like the details of how everything works, but the reaction has been pretty positive from like the ecosystem. This is from many different varying sources, a refreshing take on how to kind of like implement an improved version of the Ordinals client, I guess. It's native to Bitcoin, but because of that, this can support things like Fractal, right? So we've seen since the release of this testnet, OPNet's like affinity towards, I guess leveraging some of the anticipated activity within like the Fractal network.
Sure.
But leverage OPNet, smart contract ability, right?
Sure, so, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, this is a smart move. I mean, especially when OPCat like maybe gets supported by Bitcoin, being able to kind of leverage and utilize that new technology on a blockchain that's very similar to Bitcoin with SHA-256 and all that stuff. It's a smart move to try to stay ahead. So yeah. Here's another one. OPNet MotoSwap now live on Fractal Bitcoin. So this is what you were talking about. So that integration and that leveraging of taking advantage of OPCat as well.
Yeah, so there's opportunities here. Also, if you're part of the entertainment crowd, we talked about pizza and its potential utilization in like a swapping mechanism native to Fractal. So MotoSwap is an already existing token native to CBRC20. So I mean, it's out there, it's acquirable. So I mean, it could have some integration, most likely, like within this environment as well, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. We only have a few more minutes. Proof of DeFi from Track. What Tap has achieved here marks a monumental shift in what can be built on Layer 1, and doing so opens the door for the creation of automated market makers, liquidity pools, swaps, lending and borrowing, fractionalization of ordinals, DAOs, dude. That's your favorite subject, man.
That is my
And
favorite.
if it can be, if it can be built on EVM, it can now be built on L1 Bitcoin with Tap protocol. And then here's the CoinDesk article going into it.
Yeah, so this is now now we have multiple like environments, I guess, to kind of like analyze. So like what distinguishes them between each other, right? So there's actually some major distinguishing factors. Like remember we're analyzing the metaprotocol renaissance last year. There wasn't much that separated them. It was like some small envelope, right, that was being leveraged or something like that to improve efficiency. That's not really like a smoking gun for a lot of like degens specifically as far as like whether or not they should support this protocol or not. But
yeah,
when it comes to programmability, I think this question is much more like pertinent, right? It's like, do you want these things to be executed as close to layer one Bitcoin or not, right? Like, what does that mean as far as like things like security? How does this help Bitcoin ultimately? Stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that L2s are going to be extremely important, especially when you're trying to have a high volume environment like the metaverse, right? You don't want to do L1 transactions on Bitcoin inside the metaverse just because it will take too long, right? And so L2s make a lot of sense. I just don't know if they make a lot of sense today, right? And so, but nonetheless, it makes sense to start working on this because ultimately, I think L2 Bitcoin is going to be very, very important in the future.
Yeah. So how is Tab executing all of this? So
yeah, so I think in another video we need to go deeper into like the technicals of how Tap enables L1 programmability. But here's our chart. We've been talking about Tap for a long time. We just so happen to find them very early on in ordinals back when they were like 5 cents, and it's done some crazy numbers. And everything's gone up and gone down. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why it's up 21% on the day. I think it's clear, like this narrative of programmability and the fact that people are slowly discovering this. The Tap was like as early as you can get to kind of like pushing this ball forward. So people are starting to realize again, like the value of Track potentially, right? Because that is like the indexing infrastructure supporting all of it.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. And then here's some kind of supporting documents on merged mining. And if you, let me see, where was that link? Well, it links to this Bitcoin wiki, and it kind of explains how merge mining works. So I'm going to add this into the description as well. And then finally, there was some connection between Drive Chain and Paul Storks through CB Spears, right?
Yeah, I guess probably for another video or maybe like a podcast discussion, but yeah, kind of like what we said, this is a lot of these things that are emerging now in Bitcoin are not, it's not anything new, right? These concepts have been
That's right.
formulated since like the very beginning. Paul Stork, for example, has been like, I think the proponent for drive chains. We talked about that last year.
Yep.
BIP 300. There's something about that like proposition that like rubbed us the wrong way. I think it was like because they're like a multi-month withdrawal process or
That's
something
right.
from that.
Yeah, 6
but
months to
that's
withdraw.
probably too, huh?
It was 6 months to withdraw.
Yeah, you remember that, right? I was like, what the fuck? Who's gonna do that?
Right.
But to maintain like the highest order of like, I guess, trustlessness, that's probably how things need to be, right? So the Unisat's taking a whole different approach. It's like let's leverage this model and you know, do it our way, I guess.
Yeah.
Where there's like a little bit uh less trustlessness, right?
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I mean, obviously, we talked about a lot today, and man, it's going to be very hard for people to like distinguish the marketing and the flashiness of like people saying merged mining and Bitcoin, like L1 stuff, when it really isn't L1. It's just a fork of Bitcoin, and you know, it's another chain. So it's definitely not an easy environment to kind of like break down and see what actually is happening. So that's why we're here to you know, at least have an attempt to break this down and make it easier for people. But if you have any questions, please let us know in the comment section below. There's a ton of stuff, like I said, we talked about. Yeah, and if you find anything L1 programmability that we didn't talk about today, let us know in the comment section below as well. And we will catch you in the next video.
Peace.